So this is a quick video on how to make a snuffle mat. I have two different pieces of fleece here and a sink mat. I got the sink mat at Dollar Tree for $1. And then I get my fleece off of the remnants area in one of the fabric stores. And so I have two different colors fleece here, approximately anywhere between 3/4 of a yard up to a yard of remnants. So this is 30 inches wide. You can see I've got a solid and a pattern. So then what I do is I actually fold this over into thirds so that my strips that I'm going to cut are going to be approximately 10 inches long, and I cut them about, you can see, about 1.5 inches wide, and I just freehand cut through. And then of course I've got them doubled so I can cut here. So I've got a little nosy help here because they like their snuffle mats. And I cut those down. I generally go through and cut all the strips, the 1.5 inch wide strips, and then I go back and cut the ends. And I'll do that for both the fabric, the solid, and the pattern. Got all of our strips cut, and I'm just cutting the ends so that they're individual strips where I had folded the fleece over into thirds. And remember to cut that one end that was doubled over. And as you can see, they don't necessarily have to be the most precise strips. Nothing fancy. I try and get them relatively uniform, but I don't spend a ton of time worrying about exact dimensions and widths, because in the end it's in there snug enough that it doesn't really matter. Looks like we're going to have a little dog play sitting over here while I'm doing this. Bella. All right, so we've got everything cut up. And so now we're going to take our sink mat and, kind of decide right ahead of time which pattern you're going to go. If you want to do a pattern otherwise random, I've got more of this patterned. I've got like 9/10 of a yard of this and 3/4 of a yard of the purple. So I will probably try and use more of the pattern. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sticking everything through on every corner of the mat. So you can see I pull it through, stick it through front, pull it snug, and then I'm going to tie a double knot. Okay, and I'm going to probably, decisions on which way I want to do this, but as you can see, I'm kind of sticking it through the bottom here, bottom, and I kind of leave the outside empty at first because I really want to make sure that I have enough to go around and do all of the interiors before I decide if I'm going to do the exterior. So you're going to do not only every one this way, but you're going to also do every side this way. So what I may do is go through and do in this case, the way I have it sitting, I'm going to, maybe do the verticals in the solid pink pattern, or the solid pink fleece. and leave the pattern going horizontally. It does get a little tricky to feed things through, so you just kind of figure out if you want to go across doing an entire row or a column first and then go back, or if you want to do kind of like this and excuse me, all four areas. I generally pick a row and do the row, and just kind of keep going straight across. Again, you just want to grab and match it up and pull them through so that they're pretty equal. Tie your double knot and just keep going along. You can see I as you have seen probably with my helpers here, I have big dogs, so I kind of like to do my strips in that 10-inch if because I generally have quite a bit of food I need to hide in there. If you have smaller dogs, you might want to do a shorter length. Again, I would stay between the 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide just to make sure and fill it up. Again, that will also depend a little bit on the size of your squares. Whether you use a sink mat, some people will go and get rubber mats with holes in them, for flooring and use that. So really completely up to you, kind of a trial and error of what works best. But as you can see, mine, are a bit longer. This is not very difficult. This is a great evening movie watching activity because it doesn't actually take a whole lot of thought. It's just kind of a busy finger type activity. Right about the halfway point here, and you can kind of see on the back here how I'm following the pattern of just tying on every cross. One of the reasons that I prefer to go kind of row by row, column by column is it makes it a little easier to fight these in. This sink mat is flexible, which actually makes it quite a bit easier to work with. It'll be interesting. I've not actually made one with a flexible sink mat like this, so it'll be interesting to see if how it kind of stands up and is easy to carry around. But as you can see, I'm kind of pulling through and then tightening in the middle and pulling to the side. So you can kind of see how it gets a little snug in here, so you can see how I kind of stick it through there, the other end through the empty, pull them tight so that they're equal. And actually with this flexible one, I can really make sure I get the knot right down to the base, and then flip it over and kind of flatten. So, and you can kind of see here, stick it right in there and get it through. Again, this is the first kind of clear and flexible sink mat I've used, and like I said, it is quite a bit easier in the actual assembly process because of the ability to see where my fingers are on the other side and where the material is. I suspect it will launder pretty easily. I guess my question is how easy it'll be to carry it when it's filled. But when I kind of flip it over, it does the fleece does give it some structure. So I do think it'll be just fine to try and move it around when it's full of dog food. I kind of like using the one color for rows and one for columns because it does make it a little easier to make sure you're finding the right holes to put it in, because you can see here, I know that I need to go into that to break up between those two pink. So that's my next spot to go in. You can kind of see what we're doing here. Get them matched up, pull through. Again, not super important that they're completely equal, but it, it does help a little bit with when you're putting food in there to make sure that they are relatively equal so that you've got a little bit of uniformity in to hide your food in there. So, I typically, after a couple of feedings, I throw these just in my washing machine with a little bit of white vinegar and just let them go through with the white vinegar and water, and then I do an extra rinse cycle on it just to make sure that I get all the water, all the vinegar out. And then I will also typically throw them in the dryer on fluff. Looks like my dogs are going to get into a little bit of the peanut gallery. And hey, enough. There we go. Going to come help. But I wouldn't put them on hot. I just kind of air dry them in the dryer. Just tumble them a little bit. But that, does keep them out. I've tried the dishwasher. I know some people do that. I just find they don't dry very well. So and I just find it easier to put, a whole lot of them in. A lot. I probably put 3 or 4 in the washing machine at the same time. Okay, well, we are getting right down to the end here, and actually I'm kind of running a little short on my strips of fleece, so I'm kind of filling in as I can and going to see where it ends up. I may, the beauty of this is you can always add different colors in later if you need to, or if you have some strips. So I would say where I found I ran short is the one that I had, 3/4 of a length is, or 3/4 of a yard is probably a little too short of fleece. So I would move more towards, as close to a yard as you can for each color. So, about 2 yards per, this is a 12 and a half by 11 sink mat. So, if you can kind of think about 2 yards of material for the 12 and a half by 11, and I can get this last knot tied here, and I've got a few more pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and stick these in some of the spots where I left some openings. You can see it's a little harder once you've got everything in there, but go ahead and put these, use everything up and fill in as much as I can with what I've got here. And there we have our snuffle mat completed. And to tally up our costs here, let's see, we had 3/4 of a yard for $6.75, and then I had almost a yard for $10 for this, so that's $16.75, and then $1 for the sink mat. So basically less than $18, and we have a snuffle mat, and it took me about an hour and a half from start to finish to get this completed. So not a very expensive project, and not a super time consuming project, and easy enough to do. So have fun making your snuffle mats and making your dogs do a little work for their meals. They'll enjoy dinner times even more.